iri mari mari wamba wamba with tungi pukamanama pingili prembai. Yingin ola lachi lachi dangi. Kiaka ura the metal, kiaka ura the pangut morni. So what I'm doing, I'm introducing myself through my language and through my through iri mari mari watungi, me introducing myself as a mari mari wamba wamba tungi as a mari mari wamba wamba man. But pukamanama is my totem, my sacred animal, which is the red kangaroo. And I'm near my traditional country, but I'm on the land where we are right now is on the traditional lands of the Lachi Lachi people, which is why I'm saying Lachi Lachi Dangi, acknowledging the ground, the land, the Dangi, that's our traditional word for ground in Māori Māori language, so always acknowledge that the country, but also my elders, past and present, of course. And when I say Kiakawura, I always say Kiakawura the medal, because that's always us collectively as human beings, as one mob, one people. And Pangura Pangut Murni is always about us together. And what's the purpose of this? About preserving all the good, everything that is good about humanity, and how we pass that on to the Pangut Pangut Murni and the children, and how they can carry that forward after we've gone. Because when you're doing that, you're not only honouring the ancestors and the purpose of being and connecting to the ancestors, but us in the present, we're still the filter from the ancestors to the future and the future generations. So that's why it's always important for me to acknowledge and to introduce myself through language. So my name is Jason Kelly. I'm a Muddy Muddy Wamba Wamba man. I guess I'm in my 50s now, 52, nearly 53. But part of my journey, and I wear many different hats, but it's always been, I guess, right from when we're born, everyone has this, because we all have those ancestors and connections. And for me, it starts with Mungo man and Mungo lady, who reached out from deep space in time from over 45,000 years ago to show the world that Australian Aboriginal people, you know, not only are we still the modern people, we're still the same as what they, you know, 45,000 years ago, and that we continue to live, and that our culture is still alive, and we still have connection to land and people and country, but we're universal people. This is why with our language, with our ceremonies, our corroborees and dances, it's always around connection to country, connection to ancestors, but because we are universal, our connection doesn't just cease between individuals or individual relationships. It's about the deep space-time connection, the ancestors, the land, everything about the environment. Our animals, our totems are also our relatives. That's who we are in terms of our being. For me, Pukamana, red kangaroo, I'm a red kangaroo. So they're like my brothers, they're my family. Each tribe and each nation would have totems, and those totems would essentially are the laws of like relationships. But with your totems and relationships for us, say for example, a kangaroo can't marry a kangaroo. Or I always use the eagle and the crow, because the eagle and the crow all around the world, and no matter where you go, it's the eagle and crow fighting. But under our law, in terms of our animals, our totem systems, our animals, you can't. The tribe's got to marry into another tribe. So a totem's got to marry another totem. So for example, in essence, the eagle must marry the crow, even though in nature, in the real world, you might see they might seem to be enemies or always fighting. But under our laws, and I think it's key to relationships, doesn't matter with religions and all that, an eagle must marry the crow under our law. Because if you don't marry your equal opposite, you'll never have an understanding of the universe, and that's what's central to Aboriginal law. And even here in Australia, Australia's actually a continent of 250 different language groups, 400 different nations, but it's that one central Aboriginal law. And we've always had that caring and sharing and obligations, cultural obligations to Mother Earth and to each other. That's why we might have had conflicts, but we never had war. We never invaded. Not one people invaded another people. There was conflict, and that was always resolved. Because under law, everyone had the understanding of people and place, and how that language spoken by that tribe or that person belongs to that country. That tree, that animal belongs to that country. They are that language, and they're the holders of that language. They are the caretakers for that country, and vice versa. So there was never ever any invasion where one tribe took over another tribe and took their land and all that. There was very, very few times there was conflicts, but there was always that understanding. And that was, if there ever was, it was because someone wasn't upholding their cultural obligations in terms of law. So all of those things, as we're growing up as Aboriginal people, it's always, the elders always are holders of knowledge, but in a way, when the elders get to like a big older age, it's actually the younger people who are the carers for the older people, and that's where a lot of the learnings come from also, in terms of how your obligations are. And then in the modern context for us, we're still got to be fully functioning humans in this time after colonization. Like, the culture in that is still very, very strong, but some I don't know, I can't explain it. It's not like you're going to school and you've got to pass a certain subject, you got to whatever. There's just the culture. When I talk about the cultural obligations, it's something that just naturally builds and progresses in terms of your own knowledge bank, that all different people in your family or in your tribe, but always through your aunties, uncles, older cousins, who have been there before you, in terms of a year ahead of you, or days ahead of you, or hours ahead of you. Everything is sort of like filtered through the ancestors, filtered through the old people, and it just grows with you in terms of like a bank. And everyone has different levels of how they keep it or store it, but then there's that the role just becomes more natural. But the elders also know that and recognise that. So I think for me, my grandmother Alice Kelly, for some reason I spent a lot of time, like when I'd go to visit her, it wouldn't be like 1 or 2 hours, it was like 10 hours at a time, but 10 hours would go really quick. And Nan had this way of teaching us by showing us. And if it was a story that she was telling, or a traditional story, she would draw it with a stick in the sand, and then the wind would blow it away, but we'd always hold that story. And so they're part of the things that have sort of like guided me, and it allows for that self-inspiration, because when you have that connection to the ancestors, and you have that the wisdom of the elders and your grandparents and your aunties and uncles, and all the goodness it's all the goodness that retains. Anything else is sort of like, it sort of comes and goes and blows away with the wind. But everything that was good in terms of the essence of humanity sort of is the stuff that stays and sits, and that's the stuff that we look to pass on to future generations. And I think that's how I've sort of come to be who I am, and it's enabled me to wear the different hats, and then to be in the places that I am, and have the vision for like Lake Mungo, for example, because of my connection there, and sitting with my grandmother and my grandfather while he was still alive, for all of those times, and having an understanding of Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, how Nan always spoke about that as, and you feel it yourself, you've been there, the place where the breath of the greater spirit is still alive and tangible today. But it's also, for me, the home of humanity. And that's already been told That was already foretold by when Mungo Man and Mungo Lady from Deep Space and Time reached out to Jimbola. The elders, we always knew that, and my grandmother always knew that, but it was Mungo Man and Mungo Lady that needed to tell the world that, to prove it to the world. And so, and Nan's already spoke about that in her statement many years ago about Mungo, about everyone, especially the children and the students, must come to Mungo. And her vision, even though she's been passed since 2003, is still like it's like she could foresee it, that the world is coming to Mungo. And that's when we were at Mungo and I spoke about the vision for the international global corroboree, where all the First Nations people of the world come to Mungo to have that corroboree for humanity, because everyone has the ancestors. Everyone has that ancestral knowledge built into them. I think it comes into your spirit before, as soon as your spirit comes into you when you're in your mother's womb, that ancestral knowledge is there, but people have just got to allow themselves to be cognizant of it, allow themselves to unlock it, and you get that through nature. You get that through connection through the trees, you get it through the connection through Mother Earth, you get it through the connection to the universe, and that's that perpetual energy of humanity that goes on beyond the life form, because it's never not connected to the ancestors, and it's never not connected to the future and the future generations. And a lot of that stuff drives me in my passion for human rights, the passion for individuality, the passion for everyone's, all races and forms and cultures to coexist. Because in the beginning, before money got invented, before capitalism, or before whatever we're seeing the world's going back to, I always talk about the answer is always culture. The goodness and the answer is always culture, because we all come from the same place where our ancestors all had this relationship and this oneness with each other and with Mother Earth. There was no difference in connections. Like, the trees are our relatives. Everyone, we all gave and shared with each other, and that's been my driver, my life force. And I sort of was aware of it in my younger days, and it's always led me to the path that I'm on. But as you get older, it's like a, I don't know, it might start as a spark, but it turns into like a fire. But that's internal, and it's about spreading that flame, but that flame in a good way. Because fire can also be good. We use it for smoking ceremonies, and smoking is for healing. And it was the first thing that brought everyone together for feeds, and we use it as a tool for cleansing the land when it's done right way. So I think there's a fire that needs to spread for humanity, but in the purpose and the context it was always meant to be. And that's helped me in the stuff that I do. And even like right now in Australia, I'm a member of the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, who, when we're doing our first, this is the first state in Victoria that's doing a treaty, because Australia is actually the only Commonwealth country that doesn't have a treaty, that the Commonwealth doesn't have a treaty with, but Victoria is standing alone and we're doing a treaty. But when we started committing to the treaty, when I ran in the treaty elections, for me it was always about treaty must deliver three things: cultural and economic self-determination and our rights to coexist on our terms, but not for us to be exclusive, for us to share, to be able to have it, practice it, but still share it with everyone. Because one thing about that I definitely did learn from my grandmother, who definitely got it from her elders and the ancestors before, is that culture really, it's sacred, but it's not secret. Yes, we have women's business in that way, but nothing's really secret. Everything is sacred, but not secret. And Nan was always critical about, if we want to really preserve our culture, we've got to share it. We got to share it. And this is why she was always big on the students and the children, because they were the ones who were going to be the life force to keep it going into the future. And so also as one of my things on the treaty, I felt like what was going to be do in terms of everyone, we have this thing in Australia called reconciliation, but I don't like the word reconciliation, because when you look at the history, reconciliation is like if there's a marriage, someone's had a relationship. With the colonisation, or with Captain Cook coming and the early settlers, we didn't really have a proper relationship. We needed an era of truth telling, and that truth telling delivers on the fundamental human right of the right to know, because when in terms of the treaty context, we've got to deal with everything since the first point of contact and all the sorry business, which started with the massacres, then the protection era, then the assimilation era, which I could talk about forever, but I won't. But having that and having that truth telling, because all that stuff was designed to be hidden. And one example that everyone would understand, everyone would remember what apartheid looked like in South Africa. Well, that was actually modelled on Australia. That was here. And they modelled that on what was happening in Australia and Australian laws under what the government had was what was called the White Australia policy when the Australian Constitution was written. But in a cultural context, we have our smoking ceremonies for the cleansing and the healing. So for me, the treaty is the end product, and the cleaning and the healing. But the truth telling is like, when I talked about Australia having 250 different languages, 400 different nations, if there was a law that was broken and there was a punishment that was dealt, then the punishment was a spear in the leg. But if I delivered the spear in the leg for someone for breaking my law or my country, then I'm now responsible for them until they heal. So I've got to feed them, look after them. They'll have a scar and they might have a limp, so as a reminder of, the wrong that was done. But I've got to look after them, and that's what the truth telling will do too, because it's not about it's about hearing the pain of what happened, so it doesn't happen again. But also for us as Aboriginal people, it's not like if you understand that and feel that, or feel our pain, then it's not as like you're going to help us heal. We will help you heal. We will help you heal. So that's sort of it in a nutshell of my being and where I am on the Assembly, and what my hopes and aspirations are. But I always say, no matter what anyone is going through, the answer is always culture, because your culture comes from your ancestors, and people have just got to realise that we're not descendants of these people, we are these people. So the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, so Victoria is one of the states of Australia. For years there was a national call for a treaty at a national level, but because that wasn't happening, the Victorian Premier, who is the head of Victoria, I've got to commend their courage, because they were listening to Aboriginal Victorians, and who said that we wanted a treaty, because Victoria and Australia is the only country in the Commonwealth that doesn't have a treaty with its First Peoples. They committed to a treaty process. So what happened there, they established a treaty commissioner, and then they started the process for what a treaty might look like. And then the Victorian government had to pass legislation, the Treaty Act of Victoria, which was, I think, 2018. And then that enabled the formation of the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, which is a democratically elected body to represent the Aboriginal Victorians and to start negotiating the treaty process. And it's even written into, so only Victorian traditional owners whose lands come in with Victoria can be elected onto the Assembly, but we're elected by all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that live in Victoria. And the treaty legislation specifies Aboriginal Victorians as traditional owners that live in Victoria, other off-country, because we've got people from all different parts who are Aboriginal people, but their traditional lands are not in Victoria, and Torres Strait Islanders, and also stolen generations who don't know haven't made that connection back because of those forced removals. So they're all classified as Aboriginal Victorians under the legislation, and if you're lived in Victoria for 5 years or more, you can vote in the treaty elections. So we're here on what is, well, I'm on Lachi Lachi country, even though I acknowledge that like I did earlier. But we're here on the river, which is Muddy Muddy Jarari Dindi, Dindi meaning any river, but Jarari is our traditional name for the river. And I'm here at Piali, which is a red gum tree. But what's significant is that, even though it's more women's business, but a lot of our births for our people were at the trees, particularly red gum trees for Muddy Muddy, because a lot of births would happen along the river. And so I think it's appropriate, even though it's a women's story, everyone's born under the birth tree. So this is why this is a symbolic place. And the river's also significant because it's not only a life force, it represents our veins. Because the rivers have all these different tributaries and lagoons and lakes and little systems that run off it, but they are it's our blood. What's so special about Mungo? Mungo is the home of humanity. Why is Mungo the home of humanity? Because people were going there to look and understand the climate change from 20,000 years ago, how people survived through the Ice Age, but Mungo Man, Mungo Lady, for reaching out, was telling the world that you were not going to get an understanding of what Mother Earth is or what the land is unless you have an understanding, unless you have a relationship with the people from the land. And that's why Mungo is the home of humanity, because Mungo Lady and Mungo Man, they've reached out from deep time and space when people are trying to understand the land, but they are the ones who said, here we are, we have that relationship. You can't in terms of humanity, understand what it is to have a connection to land without understanding what it is to have a connection with the people and the people of the land. The dream, the vision for Mungo, and because Mungo Man and Mungo Lady showed to the world that we're the oldest continuous living culture, but all around the world there was another Mungo Man and Mungo Lady. Everyone at that time and space had the same relationship with Mother Earth, with each other, with the universe, with our totems, our animals who are also our relatives. So my dream and vision is that every 2 years, all the first peoples all the indigenous peoples from all around the world bring their sacred song and dance and ceremony here to this spot to have a global corroboree for humanity. That's my dream.
Yeah. Yeah.